Evening of May 3rd, 2007, a 3-year-old girl vanished from a holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, a small resort town in Portugal. Her name was Madeleine McCann. What made this case different from the beginning was not just the disappearance itself, but the circumstances around it. The setting was calm. The parents were educated professionals. The location was a family-friendly vacation resort. There were no signs of forced entry, and yet a child was gone. This was not a crime scene that made immediate sense. From the very first hours, the case created a deep divide between emotion and logic. On one side, there was fear, sympathy, and urgency. On the other, there were unanswered questions that refused to disappear. Madeleine McCann was born in 2003 to Kate and Jerry McCann, both medical doctors from the United Kingdom. By all public accounts, they were responsible, intelligent, and deeply devoted parents. In late April 2007, the McCann family traveled to Portugal for a holiday. They stayed at the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz. The apartment was a ground floor unit, number 5A. The resort was designed for families. There were pools, restaurants, children's clubs, and other families everywhere. It felt safe. Too safe, some would later argue. Kate and Jerry were traveling with their 3 children, Madeleine and her 2-year-old twin siblings. They were also with a group of friends, many of whom also had young children. On May 3rd, the children were put to bed around 7:30 p.m. Madeleine slept in one bedroom, while the twins slept in another. Kate and Jerry then left the apartment to have dinner with friends at a restaurant inside the resort. The restaurant was about a 5-minute walk away. This is where the case becomes complicated. The adults agreed on a system. They would take turns checking on their children throughout the evening. One adult would leave the table every 20 to 30 minutes, walk back to their apartment, and make sure everything was fine. This was not babysitting. This was checking. From an armchair perspective, this is the first major decision that must be examined, not emotionally but logically. The apartment door was closed but not locked. The windows were closed. The children were left alone. According to statements, Jerry McCann checked on the children around 9:05 p.m. He reported nothing unusual. The door was closed. The children appeared asleep. Later, another friend passed by the apartment and noticed the door was slightly more open than before. This detail would become important later. At approximately 10:00 p.m., Kate McCann went to check on the children. When she entered the bedroom, she noticed Madeleine was gone. The window was open. The shutter was raised. Kate screamed. Madeleine McCann had vanished. What followed was confusion, panic, and shock. The police were called, but not immediately. Resort staff were alerted first. Guests began searching the area. People ran through the streets calling Madeleine's name. From an investigative point of view, these moments are critical and also problematic. The apartment was not secured right away. Many people entered and exited the room. Potential evidence was disturbed. The first hour was uncontrolled. This does not mean wrongdoing, but it does mean lost information. Very quickly, the narrative became clear. Madeleine had been abducted. The open window, the raised shutter, and the child's absence seemed to point in that direction. The idea of a stranger entering the apartment and taking Madeleine became the dominant theory almost immediately. Investigators later examined the apartment. No clear signs of forced entry were found. No fingerprints were clearly linked to an intruder. No clear trail led away from the apartment. There were no eyewitnesses who clearly saw a stranger take a child. There were sightings reported later, a man carrying a child. But these sightings came after media coverage and were inconsistent in description. Memory is fragile, especially once suggestion enters the picture. Within days, the case exploded internationally. Madeleine's face was everywhere. Newspapers, television, posters, and websites carried her image. Her parents gave interviews. A media campaign was launched. The case became emotional before it became analytical. Public sympathy was massive. Donations poured in. Quietly, slowly, a question began to surface. First among investigators, then among the public. What if Madeleine was not abducted? Kate and Jerry McCann were grieving parents, but they were also articulate, controlled, and media-ready. Some people saw this as strength. Others found it unsettling. There is no correct way to grieve, but perception matters. The more interviews they gave, the more people analyzed their words, their expressions, their timing. When police officially took control of the case, the narrative was already moving faster than the evidence. The Portuguese police, known as the Polícia Judiciária, approached the case cautiously. From their point of view, this was not yet a confirmed abduction. It was a missing child case with very limited physical evidence. That distinction matters. From the beginning, Portuguese investigators focused on procedure. They secured the apartment, questioned witnesses, and reconstructed timelines. They did not publicly commit to one theory. This immediately created tension. The British media strongly favored the abduction narrative. The public wanted a villain, preferably a stranger. The idea that a child could disappear without clear signs of intrusion was deeply unsettling. But investigators do not work with comfort. They work with probability. And statistically, something did not add up. One of the first issues investigators faced was the timeline of checks. Different people described different times. Some checks were vague. Others relied on memory hours after a traumatic discovery. Small inconsistencies appeared. Individually, these inconsistencies were minor. Together, they formed cracks. Who checked when? Which doors were open? Which windows were closed? Who noticed what? And at what time? The apartment itself became central to the investigation. Investigators noted no clear forced entry, no disturbed furniture, no obvious struggle, no sounds reported by neighbors. The open window and shutter suggested staging to some investigators. Not proof, but possibility. That word matters, possibility. But we also ask the opposite. If a stranger entered quietly, took a child, and left, what evidence would remain? Months into the investigation, British police assistance was brought in, including trained sniffer dogs. 2 dogs were used. One trained to detect the scent of human blood. One trained to detect the scent of human remains. These dogs alerted in several locations: the children's bedroom, Kate McCann's clothing, the trunk of a rental car the McCanns used weeks later. This became one of the most controversial elements of the case. Supporters of the McCanns argued, dogs are not evidence. Alerts are not proof. Contamination could explain the results. Skeptics argued, trained dogs are highly reliable. Multiple alerts across different locations are unusual. The results deserve serious consideration. In September 2007, something dramatic happened. Kate and Jerry McCann were named arguidos, a Portuguese legal status meaning formal suspects. This did not mean they were guilty. It meant investigators believed there were inconsistencies worth examining more closely. The public reaction was explosive. Many people saw this as cruel and unfair. Others felt it was overdue. For the first time, the possibility that Madeleine's disappearance was accidental, followed by concealment, entered official discussion. This was the moment the case truly fractured. Investigators considered a theory that was deeply uncomfortable. What if Madeleine died accidentally in the apartment, perhaps due to a fall, medication, or another unforeseen event, and the scene was altered afterward out of panic? This theory was never proven, but it was considered. Lack of intrusion evidence, canine alerts, timeline confusion, controlled public behavior. But it also raises serious questions. How could parents hide such an event? Why take such an extreme risk? Where is the body? These questions weaken the theory, and so the case balanced on uncertainty. At this stage, the investigation and the media were moving in opposite directions. Police were narrowing possibilities. Media was amplifying emotion. The McCanns launched a massive international campaign. Posters, press conferences, public appeals, political involvement. From one view, this looked like desperate parents trying everything. From another, it looked strategic and controlled. The louder the campaign became, the harder it was for investigators to work quietly. Eventually, Portuguese authorities faced international pressure. The case became political. Diplomatic relationships were strained. In 2008, the case was officially shelved due to lack of evidence. Kate and Jerry were no longer suspects. No one was charged. No definitive explanation was given. The case entered a new phase, not resolution, but suspension. And in that silence, theories multiplied. One cannot examine this case without acknowledging the psychological pressure involved. Parents under suspicion. By the end of this phase, no suspect was charged. No body was found. No theory was proven. Trust between investigators and the public was damaged. The case was no longer just about a missing child. It was about belief. Who do we trust? What feels right? What feels impossible? And why do we choose one over the other? Police under scrutiny. A public demanding answers. Every action was interpreted. Every pause was analyzed. After the case was shelved in Portugal, British authorities reopened their own investigation, known as Operation Grange. This alone tells us something important. Official closure does not equal certainty. British investigators reviewed thousands of documents, re-interviewed witnesses, and examined earlier assumptions. Their focus returned to the possibility of a stranger abduction. Several potential suspects were examined over the years. None were charged. Decades passed. Each reopening created brief hope, and then silence again. Years later, attention turned to individuals who had lived or traveled near Praia da Luz at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. One suspect in particular drew global headlines. Once again, public interest surged. Once again, certainty failed to follow. What's striking is not the suspects themselves, but the pattern. Each new theory temporarily satisfies the need for resolution, until it doesn't. This is a hallmark of unresolved cases. The mind wants an ending. When none exists, it accepts placeholders. Many missing persons cases fade from public memory. This one did not. Why? Part of the answer lies in identification. Madeleine looked like many children. Her family looked like many families. The setting looked safe, familiar, ordinary. The case asks an unsettling question. If this could happen here, could it happen anywhere? One of the most debated aspects of this case is how the story was told. Kate and Jerry McCann were not passive subjects. They became active narrators of their own tragedy. They spoke to the media, framed the narrative, and maintained public presence. To supporters, this was strength. To critics, it was influence. But from an analytical standpoint, the real issue is not intention, it is dominance. Once a narrative takes hold publicly, it becomes difficult for alternative explanations to coexist fairly. Doubt begins to look like cruelty. Questioning begins to look like accusation. This creates an environment where emotional truth competes with investigative truth. At the center of this case is a painful reality. Evidence degrades over time. Scenes are contaminated. Memories change. Witnesses reinterpret their own experiences. Physical traces disappear. In the Madeleine McCann case, the most critical window closed within hours. That does not mean the truth is unknowable, but it does mean it may never be provable. Over time, Kate and Jerry McCann stopped being individuals in the public imagination. They became symbols. To some, they symbolize grief and perseverance. To others, avoidance and unanswered questions. This polarization is revealing. We tend to project our beliefs onto people when facts are incomplete. The parents became a mirror for the audience's own fears, values, and biases. In all the analysis, it is easy to forget the simplest truth. A child vanished. Not a theory, not a narrative, not a symbol. A real child. Whether Madeleine was abducted, harmed accidentally, or something else entirely, her absence is the only undeniable fact. Everything else exists around that absence.